Hello, friends and nonprofit leaders. Laura Zelke here, your host of the Your Nonprofit Life podcast. As I mentioned in our previous episode, January is National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. So I'm interviewing a variety of nonprofit leaders, founders, CEOs, and executive directors who run organizations addressing the horrible evil of human trafficking. So let me be clear. This is a content trigger warning. This episode includes discussions about sex trafficking and exploitation of young children. So if this is something you want to skip, you should skip it. Listener discretion is advised, and you can always come back and listen to it some other time. And now, on to this week's episode. Heather Bland is the CEO of My Refuge House, a long-term aftercare home in Cebu, Philippines, where survivors of sexual exploitation and abuse live in a safe, family-like environment while receiving comprehensive therapeutic care so they can reclaim their lives. During our interview, Heather shares how she knew from a very young age exactly what she wanted to be when she grew up. And I promise you, it is nothing you've ever heard of before. We also discussed the incredible origin story of My Refuge House and how one small church in Southern California determined to change the lives of Philippine girls in Cebu. Side note, Heather is also a Gallup certified strengths coach. And so we have some bonus content at the very beginning of our interview where we discuss the Clifton Strengths Finder assessment, as well as Marcus Buckingham's new Standout assessment, which he is currently offering at no charge due to the pandemic. I'm putting links to both of those assessments in the show notes for you. My interview with Heather is a little longer than others because of our discussion about StrengthsFinder, but I promise you'll go away informed, inspired, and filled with hope for humanity, not to mention a little bit more educated about discovering your strengths. Heather's just a phenomenal leader. Plus, she's funny and fun. I'm excited for you to meet her. It was such an interesting, lively conversation, despite the heavy subject matter. I think it's because what Heather's doing at My Refuge House gives me hope. So without any further ado, please enjoy this incredible conversation with this hope-wielding, loud-laughing, includer, optimist, storyteller, coffee drinker, and inventor of the good vibe thumb, Heather Bland, the CEO of My Refuge House. And if you want to know what I'm talking about with that good vibe thumb, take a look at the banner on the show notes page. Hey, have you ever wished you could hear some good news for a change? Well, I might have just what you've been hoping for. Welcome to Your Nonprofit Life, where we remove our rose-colored glasses and explore what leaders are actually doing to move their nonprofits from messy to thriving without burning out in the process. I'm Laura Zelke, Director of Member Experience for the Nonprofit Leadership Lab. Join me each week to explore the ups, downs, and whoopsie daisies of your nonprofit life. Let's get started. Well, hello, Heather. It is so great to have you on the Your Nonprofit Life podcast. I have to tell you, at this very moment, it is snowing like crazy outside my window right now.
That is awesome. I just spoke with my mother who lives in Virginia, so not too far from you in Virginia, and told her that my husband was out for a walk, and she was amazed because it's snowing where she is. And I was like, well, it's 73 where we are in Southern California. So I'm so happy to be here.
Just a little bit on the other side of the country. Well, we've been waiting they said this was supposed to start at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I guess it started at 3 o'clock this afternoon. So we'll see.
Wow.
How it goes. But
yeah,
I have to tell you, one of the reasons I'm excited to have you on today, we're going to talk about your organization, My Refuge House, and just the incredible work that you're doing there. But I'm also just kind of want to nerd out just for a few seconds or a minute or two or three or 10 on the Strengths Finder, because you are a Strengths Finder certified coach. Is that right?
That is correct. That is correct.
I'm really jealous. And part of the reason that this is top of mind right now is just because we had to bump our schedule for about a half an hour just so I could have a break from in between my meetings today. And you were like, adaptability is one of my strengths. And I'm so happy for you because I totally don't have adaptability. And so I was wondering, what are your strengths? Like, what are your top 5?
Well, I feel like I joined most of the planet in being really embarrassed by my number one. like whatever their number one, people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's mine. But I've now fully owned it, and it's woo, which is winning others over, which is basically put me in a room full of strangers and I will be so happy. And then connectedness, adaptability, input, and colluder. I collude all the time too. Yes. it's where you combine connection and includer. Yeah, no, includer. Yeah.
Well, one of my dear close friends, woo is her superpower, and I don't know how you people do it. I do not have any of those actually as my top 5. And I took it so long ago, I have no idea what my number 1 was. I think it might have been maximizer. But I have maximizer, achiever, learner, focus, and relator. And one of the things I've noticed over the past few years is my focus is getting so good that I don't hear people when they're talking to me if I'm really focused on something. Like, I don't think it used to be that bad, but the older I get, the more they kind of have to get my attention and then speak, because if they're speaking to me while I'm doing something else, I'm not hearing it like at all. I don't even know they're talking to me. Yeah.
You know, there's a great story that has nothing to do with this podcast, but Marie Curie, there's a story of her as a child that she was reading a book and she could become so focused that her siblings all built a tower of chairs around her and then knocked it down, and she never looked up.
Wow.
So I think that's brilliant.
I don't know that I haven't developed it quite that much, but I definitely have noticed, like that one, I bet if I took it again, that one may end up being the top one, because I did not know, but it could be that I've just had to tune out so much going on around me while I needed to focus on something. So just really interesting. And I love having someone that speaks that same lingo on the show and all the different strengths. And I will put a link to the Strengths Finder survey. And have you heard of, this is so totally not part of the podcast. This is like a special bonus.
Yeah.
But Marcus Buckingham, have you heard of his stuff that he's doing now? Where he's taken the strengths and then like comboed at the patterns and done the combination. Have you done that?
Yeah. So part of when you go through the strength, like the coaching certification program, they start to really look at that. And that very much appeals. I mean, so much of it appeals to and we'll get into some of this a little bit, actually, my training as a family therapist, of like kind of not just compartmentalizing, but seeing the connections between things and how those amplify and shift. Yeah.
One of our members, Cynthia Wade, I have to give her a shout out. She did a book club for her organization, which is doover.me. She did a book club that I popped in on, and she was going through Marcus Buckingham's new book, and he's got an assessment up on his site for free that people can take. And he's narrowed it down to 9, and they're thematic. And we actually had everyone in the Nonprofit Leadership Lab, our leadership team, do it just to kind of see. We did not have any 2 people have the same, except Lindsay Hoffman and I. Lindsay and I both had the same 2, but in reverse order. And our descriptions were completely different and totally spot on. So it's so interesting. And we could probably spend the whole podcast talking about, strengths assessments and how to use that in a nonprofit. But that's a whole other episode, because today we are going to talk about the work that you're doing at My Refuge House, especially with January being, Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And I kind of gave a brief introduction at the very, very beginning, just like, here's my guest. But I'd love for you to just briefly tell us what it is that My Refuge House does and where you're located.
Yeah. The nutshell of My Refuge House mission is that we are a residential therapeutic home in the Philippines for girls who have been rescued from sex trafficking in the Philippines. So that's the short version, and we'll dive into that more in a bit.
I was going to say, that's a really tiny nut, and it has a really tiny nutshell.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is good. So what we're going to do in this interview is talk a little bit about how Heather found her way to My Refuge House. And I think it's really important to always hear these. I don't know if it's like the origin story of the leader that I'm interviewing or what it is, but I mean, to me, it's so interesting to see the different paths that people took to get where they're at. And then, like, when you finally get to that place, and I'm not saying this is your final stop, but like, you're definitely at a place where you're able to finally bring everything you have to the table. But it doesn't always start out that you're there at that place, you know?
Right.
And so I would love for you to just kind of tell us how you came to be in the nonprofit sector, or what it was that sparked your interest in nonprofit.
If I laughed a little too hard when you said origin story, it's because my 8-year-old has been inventing superheroes this week and drawing a picture, and then beside them, he's writing each of their origin stories.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Do you think he would be willing to share one of them with us, that we could put it on the show notes page? Just
totally
one of the superheroes. Okay,
yes.
I'd love that. We'll definitely do that.
It might be Camille, or it might be, there was another one that was really good today.
Okay.
It was like Dark Bunny or something like that. That was really great. Yeah. But that also fits because, so here's a little connectedness in action. Because I really do talk about how with StrengthsFinder, it's identifying our superpowers, right? And I think everybody has them. And the journey of discovering them and claiming them is often intentional, and it's often completely by mistake, and you stumble your way through. One of the things I talk about is, I don't know that I set out to do nonprofit work. I do come from 2 parents who are just civil servants. My mother was a teacher. She's the music director at her church, has always been, I think since 8th grade, she's done music in church. And my dad, my favorite description of my dad is that he's a civil servant at the expense of my mother, that he just is a do-gooder. Whenever I would learn different stories growing up of people who were just selfless in the way that they gave of themselves, it's my dad. And so I think I came from people who value supporting people. So at its core, that value was there. And then in 5th grade, I declared that I was going to be a PTMPT.
Okay, wait a minute. Hold the horse.
This is important.
Yes, this is important. So 5th grade, like the number 5, 5th grade, you declared you were going to be a PTMPT.
Yes.
Now, what the heck is that?
A PTMPT is a pediatrical, theatrical, musical, physical therapist. So
I just don't even know how to respond to that.
Yeah.
Pediatrical, theatrical, musical, physical therapist.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got it.
Is that a thing?
It was to me at the time, and still is the way. I mean, you can, PTMPT still flows off my lip because I would declare that so much to people. I think I even got a Christmas gift that year from somebody who'd like drawn a shingle outside of an office building that said PTMPT.
Wow. Wow.
And I think that it really came from a weird level of self-awareness of that. I loved watching kids come to life. I loved coming to life myself and having fun, you know, and kids just kind of have this ability to just naturally have fun no matter what's going on. I loved music. I said my mom was the music director, and music was always a huge part of my life. And I've always been kind of a ham and cheesy, so very theatrical. And I'd also learned about music therapy. And then we had a woman living, and my parents rented out the basement as an apartment to one of the local physical therapists. So I'd gotten to know her and was really in awe of some of the stuff that she did and how she talked about it. And it was helping people, and, you know, she could pay rent, which seemed like an important thing, you know, as you're in 5th grade. I mean, as you're in like 11, you're starting to wake up to the fact that you have to feed and shelter yourself. I just thought like all of those things appeal to me. So why can't I do all of them? I'm going to be a PTMPT.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so did you like carry that all the way through high school and college, or did it change in 6th grade?
The music stuck, and I ended up minoring in music in college. And for a while actually was considering music therapy. Before music therapy, I actually went into college. I was going to be a chemist. And
a chemist?
Yeah, it was kind of.
Which part of chemist is pediatrical, theatrical, musical, physical therapist?
It's not, hence the reason maybe that I'm not a chemist.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
I think I enjoyed kind of the problem solving and seeing how things fit together and just the nerd science of it. But it wasn't my calling. But I had done sports medicine in high school, and then I continued doing sports medicine in college and thought, okay, I'm going to be a physical therapist. Like that's going to stick. I'm going to, I'll sing on the side. So I'm not necessarily going to do music therapy, but I'll do the physical therapy. And then the more I got feedback from athletes who were in the training room in college, a lot of the feedback that really resonated with me was they called me Fuller in college and say, Fuller, thank you for helping me to see that I'm more than my injury. My identity isn't who I am as an athlete. Being an athlete has maybe been a part of my journey and my identity, but it's not all of who I am. My injury is not all of who I am. And you've helped me to see myself bigger than that.
Wow. That's pretty significant. Yeah, that's pretty significant.
Yeah. And then that combined with the fact that my grades in anatomy and physiology did not reflect my love for the subjects seemed like a clear sign that perhaps physical therapy shouldn't be in the cards. But it is funny, since becoming I'll wind back to that. But since becoming a family therapist, it's been amazing how in my life, I still use a lot of that knowledge in how I work to kind of see people as whole people.
Yeah. And I was thinking too, really, there is some truth to embracing what you're really into at different stages in your life, I think, because there does come a point when it all seems to really just coalesce and come together. And I think it's exciting. And so it seems like you pursued different things that basically were building blocks into who you are now. And so if you didn't do the chemistry and you didn't do like anatomy and physiology and go into physical therapy, then what did you do?
Yeah, well, there was a moment where I was kind of sharing with my mom and we were looking at my grades, and the story I tell is that my mom has had her life mapped out, I think, from day one. And it's kind of, she has achiever, I think, in her top 5. And so, she just like plans it, executes. That's what happens. And so for me, the summer, or really the winter before senior year, saying, I'm not sure that physical therapy is what I need to be doing, felt like a real shift at a late stage part of the game. But she just had this moment where she just goes, maybe you need to just go to school for therapy. Maybe you go to seminary and go into Christian counseling. And my whole family just did this, like, wait, what? What is that? Like, suddenly that might actually sound right. And so that's actually, I ended up pursuing that and talking with a few people, and I applied to exactly 2 seminaries for graduate school and ended up going to one of those and going into family therapy.
Wow. Yeah, that just seems like it's out of the blue, and yet it really resonated with you.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing now, in a way, some of it.
Yeah, no, I think that totally formed my identity. When people ask what I do, I will often say I'm a family therapist and I'm the CEO of my Refuge house. Like, my professional identity really is rooted in not in being the CEO, but in being a family therapist.
So you went to seminary? I think you might be the first person I've had on here who went to seminary. So I did too, but you and I, we were at different types and, different degrees and all of that. It was funny because I was joking with Levon today. I was in a meeting with him earlier and, he was asking me a question about something. And I'm like, no, really, like I took Greek. So, we were talking about something with strategy and I'm like, no, really, it's okay. Like I did Greek, not strategy. So, so you went to seminary, and so you went into family therapy, or?
Yeah. So the degree I got at seminary was actually a secular degree. It was an accredited program for marriage and family therapy at Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary.
Okay.
So I did not take Greek. So Greek is still Greek to me.
But
yeah, good. And it ended up really, for me as a therapist, what has stuck with me professionally, I think, and as I've really embarked on doing more leadership development for myself and passionate about leadership development in other people, it really helped me to see the importance of knowing myself so well that I could get myself out of the way so that other people could discover themselves. So that for me was really where, particularly the seminary that I went to, gave me a language to think about who I was as a person. So I very quickly realized I did not want to go into Christian counseling, meaning I just wanted to counsel Christians. I went into seminary because I identified as a Christian and wanted to be a counselor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it totally does. And, I think sometimes people don't realize that you can go to a seminary and get a degree that is not specifically like intertwined with a particular religion or religious, it's just a different environment where you're getting the training and maybe some different perspectives, but it's still, like I went to a liberal arts college. And so I still have the Bachelor of Arts. I still had to take all the biology and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So with you, getting out of college, like, did you just immediately start going into this work with survivors of trafficking, or what was your journey after college or seminary, I should say?
Yeah. So after finishing my graduate degree, I was still dating this guy who I had fallen in love with in college, and now I'm married to him. So I like to think that this was a pretty decent idea. But when I finished this family therapy program, he had finished college and moved to Chicago. We were both from Virginia, and he had finished college and moved to Chicago because he's an actor and improviser, and Chicago was the place to be. And I still liked him, and families and children exist everywhere. So in my mind, it was, I can do what I'm supposed to be doing with my life anywhere. He can't, and I still like him, so I might as well go there.
So you followed this heartthrob improv guy to Chicago.
I know.
Well, did you do family therapy in Chicago?
Yes. So when I moved from grad school to Chicago, I very quickly got a job at Mercy Home for Boys and Girls, which is a residential therapeutic home for kids in Chicago. And I was the therapist for our girls' home that had 12 girls ages 14 to 16. And I was responsible for all of their individual, group, and family therapy. So that's where I worked. I worked in that home for about 3 years. And then Mercy Home has a really unique philosophy that actually my Refuge house also has, which is, hey, when you live with us and you're in therapeutic care, but living within, we're taking care of everything for you. We are like your family. And a healthy family that has some resources doesn't just turn you out when you leave or when you fall apart. And so after working for 3 years in the residential home, I actually moved into what was then called our aftercare program and started to help rebuild and kind of reboot that program, which did a lot of outreach to our alums and their families and the communities. And that's where my passion for community outreach and really kind of even a bigger system than just the families started to really take root. And then I started to really, really dig into some of the leadership and program development.
I mean, it's so interesting to hear about this and the commitment that you have at Mercy Home, that you were able to really not just be there for them 14 to 16, but then also even once they're aging out and working with them to continue on. I interviewed Adrienne Stinnett last summer about her home that she has built now in Oklahoma to help. At that time, I think she was still only helping young ladies, but who are aging out of the foster care system, and trying to help them and give them the resources and skills that they need so that they can, live life. And it sounds like that's kind of what you were doing at Mercy Home. And so you said you worked there for 3 years or
So
longer?
I was the therapist for 3 years, and then I moved into our aftercare program and was there for almost 12.
Okay. So you said at the beginning, you said you were in Southern California, and my Refuge house is actually located in the Philippines. So can you connect those dots for us?
Yeah, I amazingly can. And it's all that silly heartthrob guy again. His name is Joey. I don't call him silly heartthrob guy. But Joey, actually, this is a pretty short, funny story. At the time, we shared a laptop. And so this is almost exactly 6 years ago now. And I was on our laptop just kind of cleaning it off the way you do to, clear your desktop. And there was a thing that said mentor questionnaire. And that's totally my world, not this actor's world. And so I opened it to see if it was something I could delete. And it was his. And this college student who had taken an improv class or done an improv workshop with him, with Joey, had answered all these questions. Joey to this day says that I read way too much into this, but I stand by it. He basically answered this young person's questions about his journey as an actor, and then he ended with a timeline. And his timeline was, this year I got into this year I auditioned, didn't get in, this year I auditioned again, got in. So it's kind of the ups and downs of becoming a professional actor. And the last 3 years in his timeline said, same as year before, same as year before, same as year before. And for me, that was like daggers. I thought, oh my gosh, he's not growing.
Yeah.
As he likes to point out, he maybe was doing the same as year before, like professionally, but we had kids. And so he was learning quite a bit because we had children.
Right.
But
right.
For me, it was really this moment. And so it just prompted the conversation of what are we doing? What should we be doing? And in our holiday conversations that year, it became kind of clear that if we didn't move to Los Angeles or New York, for him to be able to try, that we would regret not trying. And that kind of coincided too with, I said I'd been at Mercy Home for a while and I was feeling ready to flap my wings. I kind of knew that I was a little bit of an instigator and they all really valued me and appreciated me, but my ability to move up in the world there was limited, I think, because I stirred the pot sometimes.
Sure.
So I was ready to kind of just see what I had more as well. So Joey had been coming to Los Angeles for quite some time and had a manager. And so we thought, well, I think LA it is. So I sent out a few text messages, one to a former coworker at Mercy Home who had moved to California. I barely knew her, but we always liked each other. And I sent her a text message that said, hey, looks like we're going to get a second chance at friendship. We're thinking of moving to Southern California. I was prepared to be a banker, by the way, because my license had not shifted to California.
Oh.
So I was ready to do something, the chemist, anything, that didn't suit my talents.
Pediatrical, theatrical, musical, physical therapist.
Yeah, I thought I'll do whatever because we just need to get there. And in order for him to have his dream job, I need to. So I texted her and I said, a second chance of friendship. And she said, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Also, my executive director just announced she's stepping down from her job. You would be perfect for the job. And I would love for you to be my boss. To which
Wow.
I said, what do you do? And she said, I work for this really great organization called my Refuge House. And then my dream job landed in my lap.
Oh my goodness. If it could always only be that way. But sometimes it is just like the perfect timing. And so you guys just packed it up and moved out to LA area?
Yeah, we did. Well, and what's interesting, so to bring back a little seed that was planted at the beginning that I don't think you even knew you were doing, in the course of that is when I decided to take the Gallup Certified Strengths Coaching program, because I knew that it would be a certification that would cross state borders. It'd be faster to get than getting my licensure transferred to California.
Wow.
And then that really, I'd already been brainwashed by Gallup because we'd done a management training at Mercy Home that had changed my life. And what that did is it gave me this underpinning and confidence and language for leadership development that was already coming to me, but then I could use with my Refuge House.
Wow. I just have to ask though, how did it go for Joey?
Well, it's still going.
The heartthrob. Yeah. And he's trying. Or he's had some success out there.
He's had some success. When we first moved out here, one of our friends said, the thing you will notice with actors and the difference in LA and Chicago is Chicago, you show up and everybody's there. In LA, you show up and you suddenly see your type. And our friend was like, for example, I've realized I'm techno dad. Because he just kept getting called in to do techno dad type commercials or things like that. And the two things that Joey immediately booked almost when we moved here, he was the delivery guy. So there's a lot of shots of him knocking on doors and stuff. So
well, if it pays the bills, you just go knock on those doors.
It's great. So now anytime he gets a call back for a delivery person, we're like, well, I mean, you're probably going to get it.
Yeah.
No, but
yeah. Okay. So Joey's out doing his acting thing and you got brought in at my Refuge House. And how long ago was this?
In April, it will be 6 years.
Okay. So it's actually been something that stuck and it's something you enjoy. And I would love to hear, like, what exactly do you do and what does My Refuge House do? What is My Refuge House?
So I'll start with what My Refuge House does and then my role. And it is a little out of the box, maybe, or we've created our own box. And I will also just note that it started out as my dream job. And then for about a year and a half was not my dream job. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not the right person. This is terrible. I'm going to fail everybody. And then it became my dream job again. So it's...
Oh, that's interesting. I definitely want to hear about that.
So we'll go back to that in a minute, because I think that it's important for people to know that. And the Leadership Lab plays a huge role in that part of my journey, I think. So My Refuge House started by a small church in Southern California that read a book from International Justice Mission that basically said there are children in the world who are being trafficked, and we can talk about what trafficking is in just a second, but that are being trafficked, that are being exploited, and law enforcement know who they are, know them by name. There are even laws to protect them in some of these places, but they're not being rescued because there's nowhere for them to go. And this tiny church of about 100 people had been saving money to build their own building. They were meeting in another location, and they basically had this moment where my kind of understanding of it is that they were like, why would we build a building that we are going to use for part of the week when we could build a home that would literally save lives?
Can we just take a moment?
Yeah.
No, I'm serious, because that is profound. And I so wish that more people, I'm passionate about anti-human trafficking and the work that's being done to not just rescue, but support the survivors who have gone through it. And you're not the first person that I've interviewed this month who's mentioning International Justice Mission. So, I think the work that they have done just to get the word out about it has really had just a significant impact in making a huge difference. Not just their mission, but the work that they've done has had ripple effects, right, across. But a church that would say, we're not going to build a building, we're actually going to build a house to save lives is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because we love IJM, and we also have kind of a love-hate relationship with them because we don't always see eye to eye with how they work and what they do or how they talk about things. But what I love is that I think that we feel connected enough to the places where we need to, where when the time is right, we can have some tougher conversations.
Yeah.
And that has been really actually very critical to our identity as a much smaller organization, but an organization that still seeks to have a voice, and wants to have some influence.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So, the long story short, super short, is that they built this house and they went through several different iterations. The stories that have come out of the founding are equal parts riveting and wrenching and comical. That just because they all live in Southern California, the founders, or they did at the time, and half the congregation, what IJM didn't know when we kind of reached out to them trying to start this is that we didn't know that they were going to say, go to the Philippines. And IJM didn't know that the pastor of the church and half the congregation are all Filipino American. So there was this just deep sense of connection. And I think even beyond, I'm not Filipina, but I love that a group of people who are Filipina and Filipino Americans really, there's a cultural awareness that is kind of baked into our founding that is really critical and is something that I have really, as a leader who is in the United States, not in the Philippines, I really value. And it's one of the only reasons that I took the job was that there's this sincerity and this appreciation of growing our program out of the culture.
Yeah. Wow. They're a church in Southern California, but they built My Refuge House in the Philippines. And what exactly do you do at that?
It's grown into, we now have a campus that has our original house that has now turned into our school building and some more administrative or infirmary, the nursing headquarters. We have a place for people to go. And then we have 3 cottages that house 6 girls each. So we have up to 18 girls on campus. And they range in age from 9 to 21.
9?
Yeah, I think they're actually, our oldest is now not 21 anymore, but goes through senior high. So
9?
9, yeah. And that has been a shift for us. So when even just in the 6 years, so my refuge house was founded in 2008. So we're a little over 10 years old, right? Like we're 12 years old. Is that right? Yeah.
Okay, so it's mathematical was not part of the pediatric.
No, that wasn't DM. No, that wasn't
okay.
No. And it's good to know that when you're the CEO of something and constantly having to look at spreadsheets with numbers, just to know your weakness. Or it's not even a weakness, it's a inability. But so when we first started, our girls generally, when they came to live at my refuge house, were 14 to 16. And so let me kind of back up a little bit and talk a little bit about what human trafficking is.
Yeah.
So human trafficking is basically the misuse of a person through exploitation or abuse for profit. In short, that's, what that is. And that ranges in a lot of different ways. It could be labor trafficking, where you are having somebody work for no money, or subjecting them to not great environments and holding something over their heads in order to keep them working. Or it could be organ trafficking, which we don't talk too much about. And it's a smaller section of that, but it does exist, where people are looking for organs and trying to take that. And then you have sex trafficking. And sex trafficking, labor trafficking is the largest type of trafficking that's happening. Sex trafficking, this is my personal, a lot of times I think sex trafficking is labor trafficking. It's kind of, there's a similar, whether it's sex work that you're using a person for, and a lot of times they're also conflated. And in the United States, that happens. In the Philippines, it happens where somebody goes somewhere thinking that they are going to be house help and they're going to be cleaning the house, labor, and then that turns into the misuse of a person's body. In the 6 years of being with my refuge house, even the shift that I've just personally seen traveling to Cebu, Philippines is the city where I go for our team and our girls, is when we first started, that 14 to 16-year-old age range was usually girls who were on the street, who had run away, who were part of gangs, who had been recruited in some way, and were connected with usually foreigners, sometimes locals, a lot of times people in the United States, Australia, Korea, a lot of times people coming to the country. So being a destination country where people would come. So like when I would go to the mall, when I first started going, everywhere I went, I would see old, generally white men with very young looking Filipinas. That has shifted dramatically. It still exists sometimes, but it's not nearly as visible as it was. And where that has shifted now, and one of the primary concerns that a lot of us have during pandemic is how isolated, but how internal everybody has gone to their homes. That has really shifted to online trafficking. So online trafficking is when usually the child is, and sometimes an adult, is online. There's somebody who's kind of coercing or forcing them to do something online, but they're being directed by someone who has called in live streaming, whatever, and is directing what is happening to them on the other end.
And they're doing that with 9-year-old?
I think the youngest, it's terrible, but people need to know that it has actually happened to babies. Like they've rescued babies, and is horrifying. And I think that part of the reason that child sex trafficking is so horrifying is because children are supposed to be so innocent, like we're supposed to be protecting that. And a lot of times it's just children who have, not been protected.
Yeah.
So over time, what that has done is that has shifted the age range of survivors from that, younger teenage. I think the average age of traffic, like when somebody enters trafficking, used to be 13. I'm not exactly sure what official research has come out in the last couple of years, but what we have seen for our local community in the Philippines is that it is now much younger, and it's affecting boys and girls more, and it's also affecting siblings, because what's happening is that it's happening in a home. And it's not always the primary care. It's not like the biological mother. Sometimes it is, or the father. Sometimes it's a caregiver or an older sibling. And we are pretty clear in our work that we never want people to assume, because a lot of times people will say, oh, it's because it's poverty. And we're like, there are plenty of people who've lived through poverty who have not trafficked their children. There are a lot of other risk factors. And sometimes it is complete ignorance where, especially with the online trafficking, the person who's kind of perpetuating it, the mother or the sister, has also been kind of tricked into thinking you're not actually hurting your kid, like, because that person's on the other side of the world. So it's okay. Like, and so there's just this manipulation that is happening, which has then really fueled for us our front end of the work that we do around prevention. So
tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So when they're on campus, we're giving them full care. We have accredited homeschooling program. And have you ever heard, sorry, this is me being Appalachian circular, and I tell circular stories. And so this is the context for the prevention. There's a story of babies. There's a community that sees babies drowning in the river, and they're like, come on, we got to go save these babies. And so everybody runs down to the river, and they're just pulling babies out of the river. And then somebody stops pulling babies out of the river and starts walking up the river. And everybody's like, what are you doing? Like, we got to save these babies. Yeah, but somebody's throwing them in. We got to figure out how to stop them from getting thrown in.
Exactly.
And our belief really is that we need both of those things. We need the care for after they're pulled out, and we also need to walk upstream. And a lot of that really grew out of our staff are all from the same communities that our girls are from. And it's horrifying to know that this is happening in your community, and then they see the impact of that, and then they're like, but can't we stop? Like, it'd be really great to not have to have these girls here. Can we do something? And so we have started a prevention program that is really covering, I think, kind of uniquely, prevention work of primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention. Just really like, here are the immediate things that lead to trafficking, the immediate risk factors or the warning signs. Here are the things that kind of lead into that. And then even in a bigger picture, we're doing lectures and seminars with communities looking at gender-based violence and school bullying and all of the antecedents in order to then, but connecting the dots to say, if you intervene at this, you're setting a kid up to be more successful and not be trafficked later.
Right. And because prevention is a huge part, just educating kids on how they can be conditioned and groomed to be trafficked. Like the more you know, right? It's the more you know.
Yeah.
So what is it like for you? You live in Southern California. You're the CEO of My Refuge House, but My Refuge House is actually physically located in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Like, so do you have a director over there and obviously you do. How's your relationship work, and how do you make something like that work when you're based here, but you're running an organization in a different country?
Yeah, that's a great question that has actually been a really fun journey, I think. I kind of mentioned that one of the only reasons I took this job was because of the value of culture. The year before I was hired, we did a complete program restructuring and reevaluation. And for the first time, we elevated our leadership locally, who are from the Philippines, to be the leaders on campus. So when I was hired, it was the first time that we did not have someone from the United States on campus. And that was really important to me, because who am I to be in charge of a Filipina organization? That's kind of the thing. But what had happened is our two directors, Roseanne and Omar, are just phenomenal. And they are, we talk about co-pilots in the Nonprofit Leadership Lab a lot, and they are co-pilots. They just, the way that they are in sync together, but sharpen each other and help each other, it's just really, really phenomenal to me. And 6 years ago, they had just been promoted to being directors and totally have the chops for it, but just didn't quite they needed a little more confidence in building of that. And I was like, I can do that. And so I think it's been kind of a funny journey for them too. I mean, I tend to just have a lot of humility, or I try to, and humor about myself of, not knowing, but also really wanting to be supportive. At Gallup World around strengths-based leadership, one of the things that is discussed in strengths-based leadership is that no matter what type of leader you are, effective leaders all convey hope, trust, stability, and compassion. And so I like to think that I've created an environment around me where I'm always checking in about hope, trust, stability, and compassion, and kind of assessing where we are with that. I've really mentioned that there were times in the shadows of about a year and a half where I just wasn't sure. And that actually had less to do with my relationship with the two directors there and more to do with just where our growing pains were with board and as an organization, kind of moving from this more grassrootsy thing to something with more stability and navigating that. So I think that once I really plugged back into, all right, Heather, how do you convey hope, trust, stability, and compassion? What does Roseanne need for that? What does Omar need for that? What do they both need together for that as a team? And how do we get there? So that has become, when you talk about focus, like that's my focus with them. And I really just try to make sure that I'm asking them enough questions that they are able to tap into their own wisdom, which is not unlike what family therapists who are good do. And so once I figured out, oh, I can apply my family therapy skills to leadership, it suddenly opened up everything and really got me very grounded and excited back into the work and made me feel more confident about what I could do.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And so when you talk about Roseanne and Omar, are they both, so they're on campus in the Philippines now?
Yeah, so Omar, he's the director of program administration, and Roseanne is the director of program operations. So Roseanne, and we've really grown. In the last 6 years, we've added a layer of leadership, which has been so wonderful. So we now have kind of a supervisory level. So it's not just the two of them overseeing everything. We've got kind of another tier, which has been really helpful. And Roseanne basically oversees all the clinical stuff. Through a couple other things, Omar actually ends up supervising our education right now. And so that the two of them kind of work in lockstep around everything.
Yeah, that's pretty phenomenal. One of the things that really stuck out to me in your sharing this story about Roseanne and Omar is you mentioned a co-pilot relationship. And I can see, they're physically together in the Philippines doing the work, and then you're in California. But do you have a co-pilot relationship with the co-pilots? Is it a co-pilot? I mean, you made up the PT, MPT,
Yes.
we could make up another word, but do you have a co-pilot relationship with them? Or?
I always have a co-pilot with flying by the seat of my pants. So, yes, no. So, I've mentioned Joey a couple times, and I think I'm naturally, even though I'm an only child, so we'll just plant that little seed. I'm an only child, but I'm wired to have a lot of co-pilots. And I've wondered sometimes if being an only child set me up to be cool with having two co-pilots. Because I had two great parents who are co-pilots, but I was kind of a co-pilot with the two of them. So I think I'm able, and as a family therapist, I'm able to navigate that. And then the place where I really started to develop a better defined structure for what that could look like is through the leadership lab, through the nonprofit leadership lab. I mean, I had hit a rock bottom. I will just be honest I don't think I'm the right person. I'm going to fail all of these girls. It's going to be awful. And people will die. I had gone to this is terrible. My family won't be able to pay rent.
Yeah.
And in my mind now, looking back, it was a day that I really felt the depths of that. And then luckily I'm kind of a naturally optimistic person who has a lot of people who love me and love me enough to tell me hard things when I need to hear it. And for whatever reason, I woke up the next day and was kind of but I'm who they've got. Can't just walk away. I'm who they've got. And so I then set about being look, I'm just going to try to leave them in as good a shape as I possibly can. And in the process, I'm going to try to make sure that I'm whole as a person. And I'm going to make sure that I've at least giving them my best. And so I hopped on, I never listened to podcasts. I'll be honest. I'm so sorry because I'm on a podcast. Now I do. Now I listen to podcasts, Laura.
At least one, right?
Yeah, well, at least one episode. Now. Yeah, I've learned the value of a podcast, but I just hopped on to whatever Apple Podcasts or Google or something, and I just Googled nonprofit leadership something, and Joan Gary popped up, and I think I caught. When did she start her podcast? In my mind, I was week 3.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it was like she was reading my mind each week. And I was like, and giving me words. It's in the same way that StrengthsFinder gives you words to articulate your strengths.
Yeah.
She was giving me words to articulate my feelings about leadership in a nonprofit in a way that also I was like, wait, if she has words for this, that means it's not just me. Like this is a thing.
Yeah.
And then she came out with that beautiful, it was, I think just before, in my mind, it was just before the lab started, the grid of people that like from messy to thriving is like a spreadsheet, right?
The 14 attributes.
The 14 attributes.
Yeah.
And I printed that baby out and I still have it in my backpack right here. Like it goes everywhere I go and there's nothing super structured about it, but I pull it out every now and then just to assess where I think we are. And what that did for me is it helped me to articulate. I think what I realized I had been doing was I was completely overwhelming our board with where I wanted to go. I was giving them the thriving and I was expecting thriving, right? And we weren't there.
You were giving them the PT version of we can do it all.
Yeah, we can do everything. And they were so overwhelmed by that. And they had been so, I think, really burned out. And I really do think that nonprofits, but particularly nonprofits, every nonprofit grows out of some sort of trauma, I believe, or why would we exist? But some deal with it every day in a much deeper way. And I think that sometimes if we're not careful, it can, that trauma, the secondary trauma can kind of ooze into.
Right.
And I think that it was heavy, it was hard, and people were feeling tired. Yeah. And then here this person comes in and is like, we're going to do this. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
And so the 14 attributes thing suddenly helped me be like, oh, you know what? We're actually all we're going to do is focus on this one thing. And it was just the next step up. And then that also helped me to see that we were making progress and helped me to articulate that we're making progress, which helped me to then give encouraging words rather than, why aren't we over here? Or feeling that I wasn't leading effectively enough to be over here, Right.
That you weren't good enough. And so I love the 14 attributes chart. I will tell you, we've been taking a fresh look at it because it's been
I'm
around
excited
for a few years now. And we're looking and we've made just a few little tweaky kind of things, but there was something that we ended up adding on that wasn't on the original. It's nothing earth shattering. It's just, it needed like a fresh look. And so we're really excited. I know it's going to be coming out sometime, probably this month, I would think.
But when I saw that post, I got really excited to refresh.
Yeah, it's good. And we're also looking at it through a DEI lens. So, having a little bit more intentionality behind that. But it is something to say, you know what, like, okay, we're on the chart. Like we're okay. Like we may be in the messy column, but we're there. So we're not the only ones who are there, right? Because it can feel very isolated. And especially when you have, high standards for yourself. And plus the work you guys are doing is just really incredibly, like you said, the trauma that you're dealing with and just the heartbreak of these innocent little children, some of the most vulnerable people in the world just being exploited and abused. It's really hard. And so, congratulations for making it through, your 6 years and to get past, what do they call that? The dark night of the soul, where you're just like, I think I have those on a regular basis though, but this isn't about me. It's about you. And you had but I'm just saying you had that one day where it just felt so awful. And what I love is that, number one, you allowed yourself to have that day. I mean, you know what? Everybody has those days. We really do. And you were saying your strengths were empathy too.
Number 6, yeah.
Yeah, I think that probably really also played into that. But you pulled yourself out of it. And what you did is you went and you found resources. Now, you happen to find a resource that we all know and love. And there are other resources out there, but we're just saying, you found, Joan fell into my lap kind of in a similar way. It wasn't a dark night of the soul, but it was somebody referring me, I had never heard of her. So, now it's like, well, how did I not know? Mm-hmm. But you have really done a lot. And the work that you all are doing there is just really incredible. And I'm curious, what do you have coming up? We're still kind of mid-pandemic. what are your plans as far as, you can't even go there. Like right now, you can't travel there, right?
Right.
Like there's a ban. So what's coming up for you guys this year? And also, for people who would like to connect and maybe donate to your organization, what's a good way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah. Well, you can find more at myrefugehouse.org. Also, we're on every social media platform. I like to think that Instagram and Facebook do a better job of telling our story a little bit more actively.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'll say is that through any of those platforms, if you send a message, it's me. So if people would like to know who that is, it's me.
Great. And I'll put links to that on the show notes page.
Great.
But what do you have coming up this year?
So it's, the Philippines is in a little bit better shape than the United States when it comes to the pandemic right now. The numbers there are better, but air traffic is not allowed in the Philippines at the moment from the United States. And I thankfully have developed enough of a relationship and technology is such that I like to say that I'm in the Philippines every day through the power of my smartphone, that I could get to text and check in and see how they're doing and offer words of encouragement. And I think this year, one of our like pretty much everybody for the pandemic everything's just been scaled down. Like you're left with the core essential. And I've been really, really extremely proud and inspired and moved by how our staff have just become an even more cohesive unit in many ways and started to really look at how do we do things creatively. Our girls will often do family visits because we do family work and we try to, from day one, we're wondering where they're going when they leave us. And we want to help make that as healthy a place as possible. And couple months, it'll have been a full year since they've seen their families. And that's really hard.
Wow.
And it's, they're stuck behind a 12 to 20 foot wall. And that can feel really isolating and kind of monotonous because one of the things we had been doing was taking them out and going into the world and going to the beach or doing different things to mimic life. And I mean, they've experienced what many of us have experienced where we're just kind of locked in. And so we've gotten creative though. We've figured out how to schedule more video calls or arrange for ways for their families to video chat with them, even if they didn't have the means before. And what that has done is it's really sharpened what is family work for us? What does this mean? How are we setting this up? We've pivoted our prevention stuff to do a lot of programming online. Roseanne and our supervisor of our outreach and prevention program, her name's Jediah, they just did a 2-day training with a couple of different universities with social workers. And so we're trying. And then even when the pandemic first hit, we had a safety plan that we just kind of quickly adapted and put into place. It was great. We felt like we were together. Roseanne and Omar are fortune tellers. I'm convinced of it. And they just were ready and they activated it and they mobilized everything. And we were able to distribute food to families and to our alumni and get everybody kind of set for something. And then we had a couple really generous donors who made that possible. And then we had organizations that called us and said, can we take a look at your safety plan? Can we take a look at how you did that? And we said, of course, because that's something that we don't reinvent the wheel. If you can adapt what we've done and it'll help you to think through it and be faster. So Roseanne, I think, is really plugging into some of those community partnerships and how can we help stabilize and influence other places, ways that are healthy and life-giving. I like to say that we're big enough to see patterns and small enough to pivot. And so if we can kind of use that feedback that we're getting for ourselves to then help other people do more and do better, then we will.
Well, I can't thank you enough for sharing your journey. I know our podcast went a little long today, but hey, they got a Strengths Finder bonus out of it. So I don't feel bad at all. I think that everything that you've shared has just been really interesting, eye-opening, entertaining, just all of the things that I think make this such a unique podcast. I actually really love our podcast. I am a podcast nerd. This is really different because it's more like a conversation, but I do feel like I learn something every single time I listen to it and I get some leadership nuggets and I just feel like I get to know what's going on in the world and what's being done to bring healing. And I just want to thank you for being a guest on the show today. And I just thank you for the work that you're doing with the girls at my refuge house and not just the survivors, but also the people that are working with them, because they're doing it under your leadership. And it really is important to have the right person at the helm, especially in times like these. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for being a guest on the podcast today.
Laura, thank you. And seriously, the podcast and the way that you amplify voices in a way that connects us all to each other, I think is really, really so important, because it can be isolating. And to know that I shouldn't feel too isolated because there are other people doing it is so, it sustains us more than I think you even realize sometimes. And I just always want you all to know that. But you particularly have a gift for plugging in. And I know that I'm one of hundreds of people who feel like they know you and feel like you're just their biggest cheerleader. And it's amazing to me that that's your relator, and it's impressive.
Oh, well, I wouldn't even know what it is. I just know that I feel so honored. Like I really do. I just feel so honored that I get to be here. I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah.
Here. I'm so happy. And I'm very grateful to have the platform of the podcast. I know that we're looking at amplifying it, marketing it a little bit more this year so that more people can hear about it. It's so important. Like you said, remember that you're not alone. And I'm glad to hear that you don't feel as isolated as you once did. And I'm going to go ahead and close it out and say, I will see you in the village, which I will.
Thanks for listening. To access the show notes or share feedback on this podcast and link over to our socials, visit our website at yournonprofitlife.com. That's yournonprofitlife.com. And hey, if you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, you're going to love The Village. It's our exclusive online community where we take what we're learning in the Nonprofit Leadership Lab and apply it. We take it to the next level with live Q&As, boot camps, online book clubs, and legit support from experts committed to helping you extend your nonprofit life. By the way, since we're just getting started, it would mean the world to us if you'd subscribe to the podcast and leave a great review on iTunes. The reviews will help us get the podcast in front of more people as we try to take the whole sector from messy to thriving. See you next time.